important issue as it affects labor movements in Nigeria. Labor also has a crucial role to play in the involvement, of course, and how the democratic role will have to be shaped as we move on. You recall some years back that at a delegate conference in Abuja, a particular fraction broke out of the Nigeria Labour Congress. Then it was called United Labour Congress, which is now defunct. Just few weeks ago, this particular defunct Labour Congress fused into the Nigeria Labour Congress, ending some years of disagreement, some years of not being able to come to the round table to straighten things and reconcile, but that has been put behind them now. So we now have one labor force in Nigeria, the Nigeria Labour Congress. And on this week's edition of Democratic Party, we want to take a look at labor movement unity matters arising. I'm joined in the studio by Comrade Bumi Fajobi, the newly elected National Vice President, Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria, and of course, who is the chairman of Trade Union Congress here in Ogun State, as well as chairman of Ogun State Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria. Those two posts, he will still relinquish them, but as of today, he is the new National Vice President of Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. And of course, complimenting him is the #1 worker in Ogun State, talking about the labor movement this time around. That is the chairman of Nigeria Labour Congress, Ogun State Chapter, Comrade Emmanuel Bankole. You're also welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here.
Okay, I will begin with you, Comrade Bankole. Now, when the issue crept up some years back and the Ajero fraction or group, let me say, broke away from the Nigeria Labour Congress, that to some people, to some onlookers, to some analysts, people that have interest in labor movement will think will give the labor movement in Nigeria a setback. And indeed, if I may put it that way, we saw that played out, and because then government had to now say, okay, we must listen to the defunct United Labour Congress led by Ajero, and that also affected the agitation for new minimum wage. While Nigeria Labour Congress was saying it should be so amount, ULC, which is now defunct, was also singing a different tune. So now, how did you see that then till the period that you now came together?
Well, thank you very much. It's really a dark period in the history of a labor movement. It's a situation that no one is happy about it. But I think both sides, all of us, we've learned lessons from that experience, and that eventually good reasoning has prevailed. And all of us, everyone that is involved, we've taken something out, and we will never allow such to reoccur again.
But some people still believe, some school of thought still believe that labor movement in Nigeria is not as potent, as forceful as it used to be in the past.
Well, I think it's because of our military experience. You know, we were coming from, if you look at generation of leaders or even young men and leaders we have now, they grew up to know military rule, you know, and the way you react during and respond during military rule is different from the way you respond now that we have a democratic setting. So, but coming from that background, people will still expect that it should be that in that, but then it cannot be so. And when you talk of the labor movement that you talk about, they are not imported, they are product of this society. So it's just we cannot react or operate the way it used to be during military rule. We are in a civil rule, and we cannot but accordingly respond appropriately. So that's just it. But people come from that background, they will be thinking it should be that way, but it cannot. Labor movement itself is dynamic in terms of agitation, advocacy, how we go about now. It is more of knowledge driven now, different from what it used to be then. So it's part of the response, and that we just have to learn to cope with.
Okay, for so many years, Comrade Fajobi, the labor movement was an indivisible family in Nigeria until we witnessed that turn of events that led Ajero to form another Congress entirely. Now, agitation for workers' demand has always been the primary function of labor movement. But we have seen labor movements in Nigeria, the personnel, those that are concerned also delving into politics. Could that be the reason why that led to that factionalization?
Yeah, I will want to thank you for inviting me to this program, and I want to align with my counterpart for the explanation he has given about what transpired. It was an unfortunate development, never expected, because one would have expected that the ordinary spirit of democracy should have prevailed. However, it's a very good development now that we now have unfold, and always say, irrespective of the nomenclature, labor is one. We may have differences occasionally, as it is common with even families, even brothers. However, there's always a point of convergence, and that's what we have seen now in ULC, also going back to its source. I mean, merging back with its counterparts, or with its source, the Nigerian Labour Congress. It can definitely not continue indefinitely, because over time it has been fizzling out. They have cause to interface among themselves, and it was a good thing, a very thing that really lifted the spirits of the entire labor force nationally, and I believe internationally as well, when it was announced that the forces have closed rank. We now have one body, the Nigerian Labour Congress. However, the politics you said, the issue of politics you said, like, I believe strongly that labor should be apolitical, just like as workers we are expected to be apolitical. However, we are not operating in a closed environment, and you know you cannot divorce the people completely from the environment where they operate. Why I believe that to a very large extent, labor have inputs in determining who takes position, who comes to office to rule, in terms of eliciting their franchise, in terms of ensuring that they maintain their right to vote. However, I do not believe to a large extent that labor should dip our hands into politics in the real sense of it. The involvement of labor in politics should be limited to determine the best person to occupy the seat. We should be apolitical.
But are you not saying, Comrade Fabio, that the event that played out then, that saw that faction pulling out of NLC, though is back now, are you saying there was no fourth columnist behind the scene? Because immediately that occurred, the federal government leveraged on it to quickly, I could remember, the then, who was still the minister in that ministry today, Senator Chris Ngige, granted audience to that group, and they were giving them listening ears to some things that they were raising. So the government could also, or wanted to use labor to also play politics.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Interest is what is permanent in this case. It's a question of government catching on an opportunity, and you will see that it's a matter of use and dump eventually. Because what finally happened was that if during the negotiation of the minimum wage, the government jettisoned the ULC. To a large extent, government, and absolutely not even to a large extent, government dealt with only the recognized, the already gazetted and enabled by law trade union organizations during the negotiation. That is the Nigerian Labour Congress, the Trade Union Congress, and the Joint Public Service Negotiating Council, which is the government service organ amongst labor for negotiation of their welfare with government. USC was not part of the agenda. They were used and dumped, absolutely, but it's an unfortunate development. But like my counterpart said, we have all learned something from that experience. We have all taken something out of that experience, and we do not pray. And efforts have been made to ensure that that does not repeat itself. You found out that in the followed-up election that was held by the Nigerian Labour Congress, they had a single lineup. All our politicking will have ceased before we come into the delegates conference itself. Even the delegates conference where I emerged, there was very heated politicking, but we have settled this on the background before we come to the national delegates conference itself. So to a very large extent, we have all taken something out of this, and I believe to a very strong extent that a repetition of this order, either in NLC or Trade Union Congress, will not likely happen. Okay, when Trade Union Congress had its delegates conference June this year, all issues were settled, all politicking was settled, and that is the order.
Settled
that is the new order. That is the new order.
Comrade Bankole, let me come back to you. Now, as it's rightly pointed out that NLC was officially gazetted, but in the case of ULC, it wasn't. But we saw government granting audience to ULC on few occasions. Even when agitation for new minimum wage was ongoing, ULC did issue a lot of statements that if their own side is not taken into cognizance, then government could see the exercise have not been a fruitful one at the end of the day. Now, if that organization, defunct now, was not gazetted, why would government play such a politics, entertaining such a labor movement to that level?
Well, naturally, it suits them. And it's not even particular to government alone. Any employer will cash in on that, because it's just a game of divide and rule. When you weaken them, the ability to challenge you, you reduce it to best. So it's just natural. It's not particular to government, even the private sector too. When they are divided, their strength is divided, and so naturally they will want to behave that way. You see, apart from being a registered union or registered trade movement, there's that freedom of association. So to a certain extent, you can benefit, but so many bodies that in Nigeria, the government still recognize them, still meet them, but then they are not even registered union, maybe professional group. So to a certain extent, they can enjoy that constitutional provision of association, freedom of association. But when it comes to real labor matter, they will tell you, man, you are not trade union, you don't have you are not known to register of trade union, so you cannot go beyond this. And that was what exactly happened. They made spirited efforts even to get USC registered. But the government of the day, it's a game. They frustrated the effort, because apart from provisions that they must meet before they can be registered, government, it's just a matter of use and dumb, divide and rule. So, and eventually it turned out that way. So it's a lesson, like I said, for everybody. Any employer, or most employer, let me say, we always cash on such a situation.
Okay, COVID-19 pandemic caught the entire world by surprise. Actually, let me put it that way, because not many people, even from the international community, ever believed that it will last this long. We all thought that something have just happened for about 2-3 months, but we are gradually moving to the 5th month now. Now, let's look back and see what has happened to the entire workforce in Nigeria. We have seen quite a handful of people laid off, particularly from the OPS, organized private sector. We have seen quite full of workers laid off because of dwindling revenue generation. And Labour too has also been singing it out to government that no state government must reduce its workforce. The best it can do is to make sure that possibly they stagger the payment of salary so that nobody is laid off. Now, with the situation we are moving into now, do you see government in Nigeria, keeping to that promise of not trying to reduce the workforce or downsize in any way?
With that, it's even more challenging. You're talking about the public sector. What about the private sector? That is where you have the problem. With the government, you can talk, you can say this, and to a reasonable extent, the government can say, but look at the private sector. For instance, look at the school system. From the primary, secondary, and even tertiary. Most private universities, they're having challenges now as per payment of salaries of their workers. Whereas the publicly funded university, they continue to earn their salary, continue to earn their pay. So also the private primary secondary school, there's been a lot of problems. You see, this experience has brought to fore the inadequacy of our system. There's no social security in this country.
But the organized labor in Nigeria has not come out to categorically put it to government that they must collaborate organized private sector and make sure that reducing the workforce shouldn't be the only solution.
I'm aware of this at the federal level, at the national level. TUC, NLC, they came out with strong position on this. That look, this is a time for humanity to come together. It's not a time where you send people away from their job. We must come together as a people and combat and contain this problem, not a time to lay people off. They did that. Even at the state level, we also did. And we even submitted a position paper to the government. We submitted a position paper that to the government and to the private sector, we move around, monitoring group, COVID association room, to private organizations, appealing to them that let us face, it's a challenge to humanity. Don't because of profit. And like Ali Babadi said, Jackson, that look, this is not a year where any private person will be thinking about profit. It's a year that what should be of concern should be survival. So we've made cases, to government and to private sector, appealing to them that look, this is a challenge to humanity. It's not about profit. What should be of concern is survival. And I think many of them have been reasonable, in their response to it, to the matter.
Comrade Fajobi, the labor movement intervention on issues concerning the organized private sector has not really been given due attention like you have in the public sector. And that's why we have seen a couple of companies in Nigeria already that have laid off their workers. I could remember sometime in May, a particular company in Nigeria paid just 20% of workers' salary, and the following month, about 80% of their workforce was asked to go home due to redundancy. So why is the organized private sector in Nigeria so much concerned about the public sector alone? We are in the organized private sector as a significant contribution, input to the economy of a nation.
Thank you so very much. You see, the operations of this organized private sector is in this kind of environment that we find ourselves in Nigeria is a challenge. Given before now that our unemployment rate is over about 23, 24%. Given the kind of environment where even the organized private sector are not getting the desired support to have an enabling environment that guarantees them their operationality in the first instance, not to even talk about profit. These challenges have been there. The Nigerian organized private sector environment is not well regulated. And in a situation where these regulations are not properly knitted and put in place, in a situation where they rely largely on self-generated power to sustain their operations, in a situation where they have to make routes to get to their facility, to get their distribution chain or input supplies to continue, you cannot but have this kind of experiences. In other climes where things are well regulated, where the enabling environment is there, government can really put the organized private sector in check when situations like this develop. It's not limited to Nigeria. Loss of jobs is not limited to Nigeria. If you listen to ILO, we are talking about millions. It's a global issue. And people have lost jobs world over. But one thing that is paramount is that there is social security. Those who lost them to fall back to, they are guaranteed to an extent a food on their table. But in Nigeria, a lot of people went into penury as soon as they lost their job. Even those who are still on the job are only struggling to survive. To a very large extent, it is the environment that we operate for now that is getting us into all this mess that we find ourselves. It's not limited to the organized private sector. Even within the public sector, there are a lot of issues which continue to make life difficult for an average worker.
So does that suggest that labor movement in Nigeria may go into oblivion? You will not have that that force, that power to pursue agitation on behalf of workers, particularly the OPS, because I keep on repeating it, OPS too has significant role, significant input to the economy.
Thank you so very much. You see, this situation is ensuring that we come out stronger. Just yesterday, the organized private sector, particularly in the aviation industry, issued an ultimatum. It's only that we don't have to grant the system before we make it work. The unfortunate thing now is we are going to a kind of a scenario where the system is granted before we can make it work. And if that is the language the government understands, it is unfortunate. Because in a situation where there is need to even support the private sector in a situation like this, and government is not really coming out strong in that particular area, then the private sector too, they have their challenges. We must look at it from both sides, right? And you see, even the organized private sector, they are now seeing the need more to have a strong labor movement within their system, because this is what we're going to engender the fact that their employers are not only targeting about increasing profits at all times. When challenges come into place like this, as we are experiencing this novel pandemic that we have on our hands, then there must be ways too through which the employers of labor within the organized private sector will give succor to their workers.
Okay, Comrade Bankole, that suggests the basic reason why casualization has been thriving in Nigeria. A lot of employers in Nigeria always leverage on that, use workers and not taking good care of their welfare, not even insurance in place, and so many other factors that come to play out there. So, and casualization, how is NLC tackling this headlong? I know it might not fizzle out completely, but at least reduce to a significant level.
Well, thank you very much. You see, casualization by Nigerian law, you know, it's something that is not supposed to be. Nigerian law is against it.
So it's alien to us?
To our law.
To our law, yeah.
But the laws are there, but where is the enforcement? The enforcement, the regulatory agency, very weak. Notwithstanding you have a good law, this law must be enforced. If it is not enforced, it will just remain on paper. Paper tiger, if it just remain there. So we have a lot of weaknesses in the system that these slave masters, I want to call them slave masters, they are capitalizing upon. And in fact, in recent past, it's becoming very unfortunate in our system, even here in Ogun State. Most of this query, I want to be specific now. If you go and see the type of situation Nigerians have been subjected to, you will just wonder, you'll be amazed that this is happening. People working, somebody working in a company for 6-7 years without condition of service, no condition of service. We even find a situation where an employer was deducting contributory pension without remitting to the PFA. We have a situation where a company was deducting payee and not even remitting to government. We have some of them who the frontage will be weedy. You will not even know there's a company there. All because they want to evade levy, taxes that are supposed to pay the government. So the regulatory body agency is very weak, and because of that, they are capitalizing. But then, I think it's a challenge to all of us in the labor movement, and I want to say that we are taking this thing up frontally. Frontally, we are taking it up. Related to it, we met the State Commissioner for Industry, and some of this thing was brought to fore, and there are moves and steps that we are to take. So, nationally and in the states, it's a challenge for this generation of leadership of labor, and we are committed to ensuring that we cannot continue to allow Nigeria to be enslaved in their country. Labor, we are not speaking for even those that employ alone, even those that are unemployed. We are not speaking for the powerful alone. We are speaking for the weak, and we are committed to this assignment.
All right, thank you very much. On that optimistic note, we take this break now. My two guys are still with me in the studio, but we'll take the break now. I'll be right back. After that break, join us again.
I just want the papers, please.
Sir.
Salary don't enter. Yes, so. And Monday never even reach chef.
Na salary plenty, oh. No wonder I no gree collect roja from my hand.
Shut up, sir.
I'm here to bail my younger brother.
If it
happen.
With good laws,
proper funding,
training,
and cooperation,
if it happen.
Hello and welcome to Ogun State Television News on the Hour. I am Adebola Oshomoji. The House of Representatives may be in a surreptitious plot to ram through a bill that seeks to vest the power over all water resources across the Federation in the hands of the executive. The bill, when first introduced last year by the presidency, had generated controversy across the country because of its desire to have the federal government take charge of the lands and water resources in the country. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, had raised concerns over the piece of legislation on July 23. The representation of the bill was done by the House Chairman on Rules and Business, Honorable Abubakar Fulata. The bill seeks to bring all water resources on surface and underground, even the banks of the water resources, under the control of the federal government through its agencies to be established by the bill. The management of the West African Examination Council, WAEC, Nigeria, has debunked reports of a fire outbreak at its headquarters in Abuja. Head of Public Affairs, WAEC, Nigeria, Diamozo Kugogu, in a statement, explained that the rumor was the handiwork of mischief makers to confuse candidates and the general public of the body's readiness in terms of security to conduct 2020 West African Senior School Certificate Examination, WASSCE, scheduled to start on August 17. The body therefore wished to reassure all candidates, other stakeholders, and general public that all security materials are safe and intact. The National Association of Air Pilots and Engineers has cancelled its planned nationwide strike to protest the disengagement of over 1,000 of its members by the management of Bristol Helicopters. The association had on Wednesday threatened to ground flight operations for 2 weeks should the company management refuse to recall the sacked pilot and engineers. The union, however, rescinded its plan after a meeting on Thursday with the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika. Gambian President Adama Barrow has declared a state of emergency and introduced nationwide night curfew for 21 days as coronavirus cases keep rising. The president said the borders and airspace will remain closed except for cargo, diplomats, and those seeking treatment abroad. He said the rising cases were worrisome as the country has recorded nearly 700 cases, including 16 deaths. The vice president and the 3 ministers are among those infected by the virus, but the president tested negative on Monday. At least 10 people were killed and more than 3,300 homes ruined by flooding triggered by torrential rains across much of Sudan this week. The country's civil defense organization said on Thursday some 1,800 homes were completely destroyed, while just over 1,500 were partially ruined. It said while 21 schools and 8 mosques were swept away. Heavy rains typically hit Sudan between June and October each year, resulting in frequent flooding. Alexis Sanchez has joined Inter Milan from Manchester United on a 3-year deal. The Italian club announced this in a statement on Thursday. The 31-year-old joined Inter on loan this season. His new contract will see him stay in the Italian club until June 30, 2023. And that's it on the news on the hour. Many thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Our focus is still labor movement unity, matters are rising, and my 2 guests are still with me in the studio. Comrade Bumi Fajobi, of course, Comrade Emmanuel Bankole. Comrade Bankole, we were talking about casualization. Could that also have been the springboard that has led to some organizations, even in Nigeria, some employers that don't allow to be unionized?
Yes.
And that has greatly and grossly affected their welfare and some other issues.
Yeah, it's really a pity because it's like we are being ruled or led by our enemy. You can imagine such a situation when those that are to protect your interests are your enemy. And where I'm coming from is that, for instance, we have laws, rules, regulations that are to be enforced. And those laws, those rules are not being enforced, and nobody is doing anything about it. Casualization is at law in this country. It's not supposed to be.
So what is Labour waiting for? Why can't you cash in on that and intervene appropriately?
Labour is a group of organized people. And you know what it means if you have to take laws into your hand. You create a state of anarchy and the rest of them. Because as we speak, we have Minister of Labour, Productivity and Employment. In there, you have a section that is a section, a unit that is about inspections of this factory and the rest of them. You now wonder what is happening. It is their due. They are being paid to ensure that those regulations are protected. We talk about safety in employment, and nobody. You see, PP, they are not protected. And they have accident, no condition of service, you have injury, you are checked out of it, and you are your own. And you have to. In other climes, such things are not happening. The House of Assembly, they will enact laws that will ensure that the right of people are protected. Apart from weaknesses in the system, in those legislations, some of them are dated, they need to be. Nobody is talking about that. When labor men will go there to revisit these laws and ensure, you are treated as if you are from another clime, is their government, you are not part of them. as if they're just there on their own. That was why I said earlier that when you are being ruled, but if you are being ruled, led by people who have your interests at heart, those will be they are concerned. They will know that they are there because of you. And so when you come up with such things, they see it as part of things that they must buy into and ensure that it's. But here we are. Most of these people that are in the National Assembly, States House of Assembly, how many of them are really interacting with the people they're supposed to be representing? So we find ourselves in that situation. But then, like I said, and the slogan of Labour Movement is "Luta continua." The struggle will just continue, and we have been able to make advances in certain areas because we are not keeping quiet, and we will not keep quiet. So we will continue to. The struggle will continue until we're able to get a Nigeria of our own, a Nigeria where somebody in government will know that is there for people, for the public, and is not there for himself. We will continue to, the struggle will continue. We are not there yet, unfortunately, for us, but then we just have to keep on the struggle. If you look at the type of conditions Nigeria is being subjected to, we just be alarmed. You'll be shocked why those things are happening. The experiences, even in our own soil here in Ogun State, go to those quarries and see, during COVID-19, there was a company that locked those guys in. They never allowed them to go home. They feed them with dry rice anyhow until they raise alarm, and now people have to move in there to liberate those people. You can just imagine, in our own soil.
Okay, now, Comrade Fajobi, government, of course, cannot do without the labor, particularly the workforce, because the entire workforce is the lubricant that will oil government machinery. They are the ones that will have to implement policies. They are the ones that will generate revenue for government as outlined by various laws, the Constitution, and the likes of that. Then one begins to wonder as to why has it become so difficult for government to see the welfare of workers as a paramount issue, that labor should not periodically come for agitation of new minimum wage. At least the law is also clearly spelled it out that at a particular period there must be a review and the likes of that. So if the workforce do generate this money for the government, why do we continue to have such lackadaisical attitude towards workers' welfare?
Thank you. Today, that question is what we cannot understand as labor leaders, because it's like a bird which cannot fly with one wing. You need the two sides, the government and the workers, to get the system going. But in Nigeria, we've not had it so very good. But if you ask government, the question is that the answer will always have been that our workers are of paramount interest to us. We want to take good care of them. They are the one who are making our government to achieve this and that. But when we look at what is actually on ground, we begin to query and question some of those submissions that they are indeed saying to the welfare of the workers. If you look at the experiences around us, even in Ogun State here, you know that it has not been so palatable. The minimum wage was negotiated, signed. It took us a Herculean task to get an agreement. We got an agreement. Where are we today?
About COVID-19 crept in, which nobody expected.
The negotiation was completed in February.
But that crept in
the negotiation was
and affected revenue generation.
Negotiation was concluded in February with an assurance that the minimum wage will be paid by February ending.
And we had the first
when we didn't get it in February ending, we were given assurances that it will be paid by March. COVID-19 came to Nigeria very late in March.
No,
the first incident
was recorded in Ogun State on February 27.
And when was the lockdown?
The lockdown started in March.
In March 30th. But March salary was already due
No,
By
it
the time
started
we're
around March 20 because I can remember schools were shut exactly March 20.
Now, all these incidences put query. But it's not peculiar to Ogun State. That is one thing I want to know. We have had states who even cut the existing salary structure of their workers without input from the representatives of the workers. All right? These are unfair. They are purely no other way to put it, of purely an unfair labor practice. I mean, if we also buy into the idea of collective bargaining and as enshrined by the international labor laws and principles, then government should ensure that these treaties they are committed to are made to work. And if the workers are not getting the best, if they are not getting the best of the system, definitely there is no way the system will run properly. So these are concerns here and there. And unless these concerns are addressed and we allow our system to run properly, we'll continue to have issues both with governance and with labor.
Okay, thank you very much. We are always democratic when it comes to democratic parts on this channel. And so we'll be taking calls from people on the matter that we are taking a look at, that is labor movement unity matters are rising. So democracy is at play. So you can call in. The number will be on your screen very shortly. So we await your input so as to make this conversation more interesting. My two guests are still in the house, Comrade Bumi Fajobi and of course Comrade Emmanuel Bankole. Coming over to you, does the organized labor, by the time we are agitating for salary increment and the likes of that, do we incorporate the organized private sector? Because I've not always have that opportunity to see whether the organized private sector is also carried along. And also to remind you that what government generates might be far and above that of the organized private sector, taking an employer in the private sector, for instance. So do you people always carry them along at all?
Well, thank you very much. The way it is done is this. Before any minimum wages arrive, we have NECA. NECA, they are usually represented.
What is NECA?
National Employer Consultative Association. So they are there. They are there. So before any new minimum wages arrive, they are part of it.
Okay, please, I would like to intersect you there. We have a caller here. Oh, hello, good afternoon. Hello? Hello? Okay, you can go ahead.
So they are involved. In the private sector negotiation, they have their machinery. Unlike in the government that you continue to agitate and make, they have their machinery, trade by trade, sector by sector. For instance, the food industry, they have their standard. The construction, they have them, they are standard. So you don't have much of problem compared to what you have in the public sector.
So that means we don't operate the same salary structure?
No. The private sector, they have their own trade by trade. Like if you look at the banking sector, they have their standard. The food industry, they have their own. The construction, they have. So sector wise, they have. And the machinery is such that from time to time, unlike the public sector, that it must the whole world we hear about.
Okay, Comrade Fajobi, any addendum here?
Yes, the fact is that wage negotiation in the private sector in Nigeria appears more seamless than we have it in the public sector. In the food industry that he mentioned, they have their salary increase every 2 years. And there's no much noise about it.
And it's been regular.
In banking sector, and that is what it's supposed to be. In other climes, labor wage negotiation does not necessarily have to be hyped like we have it in Nigeria, where we have to shout and shut the system down before normal thing is done. I mean, it's a normal thing. The inflation system is there. Look at where we are today.
So I was about talking
about
the
exchange rates. Look at the exchange rates.
So I was about talking about the market forces as well too, because if you say we operate different salary structures, the market forces will prevail or will confront the two sectors.
We're in a parallel system. We're in a parallel system. let us understand that we cannot have the same salary structure. All right? Even in the public sector, there are different salary structures. All right? But what we are saying is that enhancement of salary ought to be seamless. It's not something that every one body must hear about before we agree on what is to be paid. The system is such that it ought to oil itself, just like you are maintaining your motor car. Government labor ought to, it's supposed to be periodical. And once it is time, you just go to the table, negotiate, come to agreement, sign and the agreement, and implement it. That's what
please
just
hold your thought. We have a caller on the line. Hello, good afternoon. Yeah, please, your name and where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Rwanda.
Your name, please. The name? Oluwayomi. Okay, go ahead.
So what have we been doing? I want to talk to comrade, the comrade that is there.
The comment that is what?
That's with you. I still remember his name.
Okay, the one that is very close to me by my left, yeah. Okay, comrade Fajobi.
I want to ask what comrade has been doing concerning the minimum wage.
Okay, thank you very much. That's another question. At least we're just talking about that.
Thank you.
He wants to know why the minimum wage has not seen the light of the day.
Thank you. Incidentally, we are both concerned about it. You cannot single me out. However, efforts are on. Though I wasn't around for some time, but he has been I have people holding forth for me, and he's also have been the vanguard of ensuring that the minimum wage is implemented. And if you had me, I've just mentioned it in my conversation. The fact is that we have made all effort to ensure that we have an agreement on the minimum wage. Now, just last week, there was a meeting and Labour prioritized the implementation of minimum wage among other issues we are having in the public service. It's of paramount importance because there has been a huge gap in terms of prices where we were in 2011 and where we are today. Even between last year, when that minimum wage was agreed upon, and this year, there has been a gulf of difference in prices. So we cannot continue to be on the same salary scale at this point in time.
Okay, Comrade Bankole, perhaps to have a win-win formula, that is, Labour will not lose at its own end, then government too also will not lose at its own end. Peradventure, could it be possible for Labour to scale down this minimum wage by saying, okay, if revenue generation has been dwindling since COVID-19 set in, is it possible to start implementing it by 50%?
Well, that can only happen elsewhere, not in this, because it will only happen where you are seen as a creator of wealth, and in the time of plenty, you partook. It's only then you can say, okay, like it's done in some private company, when they have challenging issue like time like this, they will just come, Labour and the management can look, this is our turnover, this is profit margin, for so reason, this is what we have. And Labour will willingly agree with them that look, because of this, let's we are, instead of retrenching anybody, let's 20% reduction in our salary. And whenever the economy, the fortune of the company improves, the books will be down. It's open. Not when good days, some people are eating away. Okay, and when you have that, so it's not possible. That's why we
when they have bumpers, they usually share.
Comrades,
when they have windfall,
let's take this
when
call.
they have the windfall, we
have a caller already. Can you just hold your thought? Hello, good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon. Are you still there? I think we have lost that. But okay, now, as we
so that is it.
Gradually
if in the times of plenty, we are there, we were recognized. So if there are challenges, we will also see reason that okay, and social time, not when you are keeping the books. We don't even know.
Most times these books are always laid on the table, but Labour will always not.
No, they are not always laid on the table.
Why you there when the books were?
They are never laid on the table.
Why you?
Most of the things we get.
They will come out with what government is generating, maybe on monthly or.
I'm hearing that from you.
On monthly basis.
I don't know about
then
it.
Then Labour will now come up with his own position. Then you should be able to come to an equilibrium point where we can have an amicable resolution.
I think we are talking about the ideal. and we are yet to have their deal. Until when we have their deal, then we will relate in that manner.
So the current minimum wage, is it a living wage or otherwise?
Minimum wage, that's what you call
It's not. You've not described it yourself.
It's not a living wage.
Just
It's
a
not a
maintenance
minimum.
ration, you know. You have, you can have reproductive, you know, when you want to, the ration that will engage, you know, for reproductive activity. But this one is just sustenance, survival. So just, you know what we asked for initially, but along the line, we just have to say, well, let's just take this and leave those who live to fight another day. Yes, and the struggle continues. So it's not even, we are not even there at all. Because look at it, 30,000, 30,500 in Nigeria of today. How do you?
Okay, Comrade Fajobi, just in one sentence before we wrap up the show. IPMAN, Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, said petrol price, the pump price of fuel should go to 150 per liter.
A very unfortunate development, but I know that government will hear from us very soon.
All right, thank you very much. It's on that note that we are going to wrap up the program for this week, Democratic Part. I've enjoyed the company of Comrade Bumi Fajobi, who is the National Vice President, Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria, and of course, Comrade Emmanuel Bankole, the Chairman of Nigeria Labour Congress here in Ogun State. I must thank you, gentlemen, for finding time to share your thoughts with us on the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'll remain to the show there. Until next week when I come your way again with another interesting topic and another set of guys. Keep flourishing in the peace of the Most High. Bye for now.
This is OGTV, the People's Telly.
You're watching. You are watching.
Sound Vision.
Sound Vision, the spectrum for entertainment, set to inform, educate, and fully entertain you. Sound Vision is a place where you can catch up with the latest gist, music.
Money fall on you, banana fall on you. Boss na China, na wahala you dey cost, na yawa, disgusting.
Fashion and style, event, comedy. Get to know more about your celebrities and Sound Vision. Showing on this station. Sound Vision, entertainment with vision.